Oh, it's BlackHat. BlackHat 2025 in sunny Las Vegas, where, when you look at the thermometer, you think it's actually your blood pressure and heart rate or something. But, we're here. And we're recording live from the Cybersecurity TV studios in the beautiful and air-conditioned Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. I'm not telling you which floor. But I am your host, Doug White. And joining me for this interview is Theresa Lanowitz, the Chief Evangelist, a title I've always wanted to hold, at LevelBlue. Hi, Theresa.
Hi, Doug. It's great to be here with you in balmy Las Vegas.
Balmy, even, yeah.
Balmy,
They said it was cooler today. My Uber driver yesterday was like, "Oh, it's not so bad today." I was like, "Oh," it was like 68 degrees at my house.
Scorched, yes.
Yeah, I walk out of the airport, and it was like when I used to be a consultant in Houston, and I would fly down there from New York and just be like, "Oh, what is this? Why does anyone live here?" But well, I was really excited to see you on here because I love to talk about supply chain. I've been terrified about supply chain for a long time, a lot longer than it was a term. I mean, I'd never heard a term for it until recently. Like, maybe tell us a little bit about how you define supply chain.
Absolutely. And I'm with LevelBlue. And what we did at LevelBlue recently is we conducted research, 1,500 cybersecurity professionals, C-level -1, -2, across 16 different countries and 7 different industry verticals. And we were able to discern some really great information about the software supply chain. And if you look at the software supply chain, the way we define it is all of the tools, the processes, the libraries, the code that goes into building, publishing, and creating that software artifact.
So I guess what started getting me scared about this was the minute that I sat down and I used someone else's code. So, I mean, this is way back now. So this is like way, way, way back. And I had a job. I was responsible for lots of code. And I'm very mine. But I couldn't do it all.
Right.
I mean, there was just no way. And I had to farm some of it out. And I said, "Can you write this module for me, John?" And John said, "Sure." Now, it wasn't good.
And John was a human being, right?
No, John was
Okay.
absolutely a human being. But back then, that was all sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
John was a literal, walking, breathing human being, at least as far as I know. And the code wasn't great. And I was like, and I had to redo a lot of it. And if I had just stuck it into, now we had a good process. It was a bank, so we had a good process for making sure bad things didn't get into print. But today, I find myself more and more just, I need something, it's sitting right there in PyPy. I'm like, "Numpy, my friend," and not to run down our NumPy. Different people argue about my pronunciation of Numpy, but Numpy sounds so cool. I mean, you obviously see that in your studies, like how much of this stuff is going on.
Right. And there are 3 big things that are really driving the software supply chain right now. Because you mentioned that several years ago, it was a term that we really didn't have in the industry, and it's become quite popular over the past couple of years. And there are really 3 things that are driving that. First thing is, it is in the zeitgeist of 2025. The second thing is that we're really in the API economy. And the third thing, and this is what you're alluding to, is software acquisition. So if we take a look at the zeitgeist of 2025, we see large mega companies inside the United States writing to their software suppliers in open letters saying, "Hey, we want security over features and functionality. It's okay if we go a little bit slower because we want security first." And then you take a look at the second thing of living in that API economy, where the API is really the communications glue that allows applications, devices, businesses, companies, different industries to really connect and talk to one another. And that expands the attack surface, certainly. And then the third thing is really software acquisition. Where are we getting our software from? And we're getting our software today from a variety of places. We're getting it internally developed, that you developed and then John developed, which wasn't very good in your assessment. So internally developed. We have commercial off-the-shelf software. We have open source repositories, which 20 years ago we would have never thought, oh, we can go out to an open source repository and get pretty much anything we want. And then the big thing that we're seeing today is AI generated code. So our software supply chain is just expanding, the attack surface is expanding, and it is now firmly in the zeitgeist of 2025. You know, we've seen a lot of software supply chain attacks over the past several months as well. And so that's really, really kind of sounding the alarm for organizations to say, oh, I really need to take a look at where my software is coming from and what it is that I'm building.
And I see how that AI driven and AI LLM generated stuff is so addictive, because even in my own work, it's like I went from no, never, I will not do this, I will not touch this stuff, I don't trust it, never, to, well, maybe just for this thing, or maybe just to test, and then, I can get this module to work, and the next thing you know, you're like, ChatGPT, like, write that code, I'll be over here and having a beer, and that scares me, because I notice what the LLMs tell me. Like, they almost always start with, be sure this module's installed and be sure that module's installed, and we start plugging those modules in. And I'm worried about that dependency chain, which is really the supply chain. How do we manage that? I mean, where does that go? Because I always took on my show about Augustus de Morgan, who said big fleas have little fleas upon their backs to bite them. And I see that with these modules. It's like, I installed this module. That module got 5 modules to install. Those 5 modules have 7 modules to install. And the next thing you know, I've got hundreds of modules. I have no idea where they came from, and I'm terrified. What do we do about it?
Yeah, you're bringing up the really interesting component of writing AI-generated code. You're actually checking it from a human being's perspective, right? I mean, you're going in there, you're applying your years of software development knowledge, and you're saying, this module isn't so great. This module is passable. Oh, this defect is now inserted in here. So what we're seeing is a lot of AI-generated code is being put into open source repositories. They're being put in there with oftentimes empty packages. A software developer can then come around, say, oh yes, that sounds exactly like the package that I might need, take it, and it's empty inside, because they're not applying that human element to it. So in the software supply chain, there's always that human element. You always have to be able to go back and check and verify, because if you're just relying upon AI-generated code, you can get a lot of defects. You can get bloated code. And this is something that a lot of the people in the performance engineering community are talking about right now is, all of this source code is just so big and so bloated that we're seeing performance really take a hit because of this, because we don't have people who are going through there with that knowledge saying, oh, let's take a look at this and let's see what's going on here.
Is that what you call supply chain visibility? I mean, is that the term, or have I got that kind of off?
That's part of it, right? So the software supply chain visibility is understanding where is your software coming from,
Right.
What tools are you using, what libraries are you using, what components are you using, and that supply chain visibility is really linked to breaches. And in our research, what we found is that people with low visibility, so 80% of organizations with low visibility in their software supply chain, meaning they don't really understand where the software is coming from, they're not working with their third-party suppliers to understand what their security practices are. 80% of people with low visibility had a breach in the past 12 months. Now, if we contrast that with 6% of the organizations who told us they have high visibility and they had a breach, that's a big, big difference. And you also take a look at that, and then you start to say, well, if I have high visibility into my software supply chain, I understand where the software is coming from, I understand the security practices of my suppliers that I'm bringing in here. I may be working with a trusted third-party supplier that I've been working with for decades, and they do really great code reviews. Now, I'm going to do my own code review, of course, to make sure that what they're doing is fitting with my security practices. So understanding the security practices of your third-party suppliers. That also says that you can be more innovative, and it gives you less risk in looking at things such as maybe unsupported software, understanding third-party supply chain, understanding open source code that you might be bringing from a repository, and so on. So that gives you far more confidence in order to really innovate.
So it's almost like a certified like S-BOM kind of thing that you really need to have. I mean, I would kind of, if you were telling me right now, like you and I were talking before we recorded about one of my classes, I don't care. That sounds bad. I don't care about this environment because it's a total test laboratory environment for a student playground. I'm not concerned. Vulnerability is good. Nobody can get to it except students. So I like that. But if I was trying to push this code, I would be absolutely terrified, because I was looking at it and I'm like, libraries piled on top of libraries on top of libraries. Even if I had the S-BOM, I don't know that it would help me. It's like reading the back of a box of cereal and going, what's in this? And there's words you can't pronounce. And you're going, should I eat this or not? And, you kind of have to just leave it there.
Well, that S-BOM, the software bill of materials, having that inventory, that cargo list, if you will, codified list of everything that's in that piece of software and where it came from, if there is some type of vulnerability that is exploited, you should then be able to really go back and say, oh, I got this from this open source repository. Oh, my third-party supplier that I've been working with for decades wrote that. Or that's a library that's been inside of our organization for 25 years, and I just pulled it up.
Well, now this is I promise this is the gotcha question. It's not, but I want to ask it. I just thought of it. When you were talking about the correlation between the visibility and so on, I wonder how vibe coding stuff is affecting that, because vibe coding, if you're not familiar with the term, means that instead of a developer, you have somebody who just says, hey, ChatGPT, we need a UI for the ATM machine. Make it purple, maybe. I mean, do you think that could have a big impact there?
Huge impact. Absolutely huge impact. And this idea of vibe coding, a lot of people are using it. And as you mentioned, if you're going into production with some of this software, you better understand what your S-BOM is. You better understand what your vulnerabilities are. If you're working with third-party suppliers, you should know their security practices. So this idea of vibe coding, what it does is it allows a lot of organizations to just go and say, hey, write me, a module that does X, Y, Z. And, I'm going to put it in my favorite open source repository with this really attractive name. And maybe it's empty. Maybe the vibe code said, well, I kind of can't do that work for you. Maybe you should be doing that work on your own. So, but you then go ahead and publish it to that open source repository because you didn't really check. You thought, well, I vibe coded it, everything's fine with it. Then the next person comes along, takes it because it's an attractive name, says, yes, this is something that I would definitely use. And it could be empty. It may be empty. The developer might not be checking. Then what you get to is slop squatting with just a bunch of empty modules all over the place, leading to more vulnerabilities that can be exported, leading to ways in for an adversary and so on. So this idea of vibe coding, while there are some really good ideas that can come from it, you really, again, have to bring in that human element. And that's a big, big part of the software supply chain.
So that does almost make me think that it shifts a lot of this focus up into what in my day was called systems analyst, because I was a systems analyst, and so part of my job was to review other people's code. So somebody sends me a module, I say, dude, this isn't going to work. You've really screwed this up or whatever. So do you think that is going to be a big growing sector? Is this sort of, I don't know what to call it, QA systems, and you may know what to call it, is a QA systems analyst kind of role?
I was a big person in the QA world for a long, long time as well. I was an analyst with Gartner, software quality assurance, big area. And one of the things we've gotten away from probably in the past 2 decades is this idea of good, solid software engineering, where you really have all the stakeholders. You're bringing in the business analyst who may have gone off and gathered requirements, the functional requirements, the non-functional requirements. Functional requirements meaning how the software actually works, but the non-functional requirements, let's look at things such as performance and security. And for a long, long time, the industry really ignored those non-functional requirements. Now this idea of vibe coding is bringing back this idea of saying, hey, we have to have good software engineering, good software engineering practices. It's not about let's just put something out because we can. And that goes back to one of the things I talked about earlier with the whole idea of the software supply chain is it's really within the zeitgeist of 2025. You have major corporations calling for security over features, security over speed to market. So I think that we're going to get back to that because we see some of the flaws that some of these newer types of coding are introducing. That's not saying that we're not going to see these types of things become more popular in the future, but we have to go back to basics to understand from a software engineering perspective what we're doing.
Yeah, I had a person named Marion. Hi, Marion. I don't know if Marion's still around, but that would not let you commit. Marion was not a coder. She didn't know anything about code, but she knew about signatures on forms.
Yep.
And unless all those people had signed and approved and all the tests had been done, she was not going to allow this to commit to
Right.
prod. And I think we need to get back to that. We got into this world of just spaghetti coding, pseudocoding, whatever,
Yep.
and now it's vibe coding or whatever. What is it, the ultimate, though? What should we do? What do we need to do? Is it open source? Is it visibility? Is it S-BOMs? All the above.
All the above. It's visibility into your software supply chain and visibility with the software suppliers that you're working with. So whether you are bringing code in from open source repositories, trusted third-party advisors that you've worked with for decades, AI-generated code, commercial off-the-shelf software, you have to understand the security practices, the security procedures that they're using within the side of their own organization. And also going back to that idea of good software engineering practices, good software engineering hygiene, that's a big, big part of it. And you take a look at some of these other things that adversaries are doing right now, living off the land attacks. They know where the vulnerabilities are inside of source code, whether it be open source code, whether it be commercial off-the-shelf software, code that you've written, they know where the vulnerabilities are. They can just use those to get into your system.
Why wouldn't you?
Right. It's easier, right?
It's all real scary to me. But thank you, Theresa Lanowitz, for joining us today. If you want to find out more about LevelBlue, please visit securityweekly.com/LevelBlueBH. For all BlackHat 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/BlackHat. Thanks again, Theresa. And we will be here all week, and we'll have some more stuff after the break for you. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Doug. It was great to be here.
Yay.